Well, this is the episode we're going to be doing today, the top 10 questions with simple answers coming from the blueprint from California Independence. You can find the document at calexitnow.org, frequently asked questions. What is the process to Calexit legally? Just go to calexitnow.org. There's the frequently asked questions button. Click that. What is the process to Calexit legally? It has this policy manual called the Golden Guide to Independence, or the Blueprint for California Independence. And we're going to do the top 10 questions today. I've been meaning to get to this for a while, and I apologize. A lot of people are collecting signatures out there, and they are getting questions from the public. Now, we've said, really, what's wrong with asking the public to sign a petition so that you can have a vote in a democracy? That should be germane enough. Secondly, Donald Trump said when people are dead and homeless and beside themselves and destitute in a disaster in the Palisades fire, I don't know if I want to help because I don't really like you guys. That enough seems to be getting a lot of people. But some people have some technical questions, and we got the answers right here. We're going to be reviewing this book, the Blueprint. Let me show you that. So this is the Blueprint document. There's the cover page. Golden Guide to Independence, Blueprint for Independence. We wrote this book for you. It's an executive summary. It was written by us, and we had this experience here to make this book. And here's what we're going to be spending a lot of time on: the table of contents. Why we wrote this for California history, Calexit, but here's this where it gets what you want to know. Things you won't lose with California independence: military defense, borders, international trade, water, donor state federal funding, disaster assistance, Social Security, a progressive America. Things you will gain with California independence: lower taxes and economic growth, universal single-payer health care, eradication of homelessness permanently, keeping our youth from dying in wars, saving our lives from gun violence, protecting your civil rights. Additional reasons for California independence: California is different, removing bad influences, we are not fairly representative, and we are not fairly represented, and the relationship hasn't been working for a long time. Now, every single question you have, you just go to the page number. So here's military defense. I know this is a 200-page document, but you don't have to read the whole thing. I only want to know about military defense. Let's go to page 14. There's page numbers on every single page. Boom, page 14. California already has its own Army and Navy military defense. Military defense. And here's the facts that you'll see here. And then here's the suggested policy. And then these are the references. So every section has this blue section right here that tells you the facts right up front. And then it tells you the policy we should pursue. The rest of the book is references. So this is what I was telling people. There's only 23 pages of reading. You only really need to read this blue border section. You don't need to read all of this. That's just references if you have any questions. See, read the blue, and you can ignore all this. Read the blue, ignore all this. It's all citations in case you're not sure we're telling the truth. Just citations, 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 more citations, even more citations. Finally, we get to another section. California already has its own border stations, page 24. Again, you only need to read the blue. Here's the suggested policy. You can ignore all of this, which is just the references. Let's check that out. Border stations on page 24. Borders, page 24. So it works. You don't have to read the whole thing. You don't have to read the whole thing. You can literally just look at the table of contents, find the section that you're looking for, and you only need to read the blue boxes, not the rest of the document, etc. So that's where all the references are going to come from, and I'll show you. But let's get started. Here are the top 10 questions, and here's the quick answers. And again, here you can find out more. Here we go. Military. So a lot of people say, what if America invades you? What if Russia and China invade you? How will you have a military? Here's the answers. There's something called the nuclear shield. So since the 1950s, or the Cold War era, America developed what they call a nuclear prevention strategy. The idea is that America will never allow a foreign military to land in Canada or Mexico because they would have a beachhead. If they have a beachhead on the ground, they can now launch nuclear strikes on America. And if America launches nuclear strikes on Mexico or Canada to prevent someone coming into America, that's so close to the American border that you could have radiation fallout. So the point since the 1950s for American defense is nobody gets to land in the Northern American hemisphere ever, even if they're in an independent country. Hence, Canada and Mexico don't have to worry about invasion because America will never let them be invaded, because that puts America in a dangerous spot. And this policy goes back to 1955. The other option is, well, what if America wants to invade you? You just left. What if America wants to invade you? How would you stop them? We're having a peaceful vote to secede. We're asking for permission from Republicans to leave. Why would somebody invade us again to take us back over if they kicked us in the butt on the way out? That doesn't make any sense. Secondly, let's talk about an independent California military. The state with the highest number of active combat duty vets, retired vets, and general military personnel is California. So we have the most combat trained, most combat experienced, biggest officer corps, largest number of humans, most combat experience. We beat Texas. So if we were independent, we're already taking like a huge amount of people, making us somewhere between the third and seventh largest and most combat experienced military overnight. If you look at the amount of money that California spends on the American empire, it's about $100 billion. That automatically places us in the same neighborhood of 3 to 7th largest military in the world overnight. We already have an independent military, independent from the federal government right now. It's called the Cal Guard. It is not the National Guard. That is a separate thing. The National Guard can be federalized, and so the federal government can order the National Guard out of the country to go do other things. The Cal Guard can never be federalized and is only under the control of the governor. Only about 3 states in America have that, including us. If we redirected all our funding from the National Guard to the Cal Guard, we'd have the 7th largest military independent of the federal government overnight. Finally, we're talking about a relationship with Canada. Nobody's talking about Russia and America's relationship or putting up walls or trade barriers. Cutting off trade with America would be ruinous for the California economy and the American economy. It would cause an automatic depression, not recession, depression. So nobody's talking about putting up border walls. Nobody's talking about a Cold War between America and California that would be ruinous for both places. What we're talking about is a relationship like Canada. Despite what Trump said, Canadians don't want to be Americans. However, Canadians marry and date Americans in recordly high numbers. Canadians travel throughout America. Canadians invest in America and vice versa. Why can't we have a Canadian relationship? So we can't be invaded because we're on the same continent as America and they won't allow it. We're not going to be invaded by America because we were asked to leave and kicked out. And we can have the largest military or one of the largest militaries overnight simply by taking the resources from the American military or by redirecting funds. Finally, I want to talk about how safe does the American military make California? So the 2 biggest wars that Americans fought in the last century were the Vietnam War, well, in the last 80 years, the Vietnam War and the Iraq War. The state with the highest number of dead boys and girls in the Vietnam War was California. The state with the highest number of dead boys and girls in the Iraq War was California. The state that had the largest protest against the Vietnam was California. The state with the largest protest against the Iraq War was California. So we have hated these wars more than anybody, and yet we suffer and have dead boys and girls more than anybody for that. I don't exactly consider that a good deal. Also, in World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt challenged the Empire of Japan. What did they do? Land a submarine in California. George W. Bush and Barack Obama challenged Al Qaeda and ISIS. And then there was an ISIS attack in California, one of the most deadliest ever. And Homeland Security said that California was the most vulnerable to a terrorist attack, but did not give us adequate security funding. Then there's Trump, and he threatened North Korea, calling him a rocket man. What did the first thing North Korea do? Say they developed a missile that could hit California. So, for all the benefit the American military provides, they got us into a situation where we were a target for terrorism more than anywhere else in America. That was Bush and Obama. And they started a conflict with North Korea that almost got us nuked. And they started a conflict with the Japanese Imperial Navy, well, after Pearl Harbor, but really Roosevelt cutting off gas precipitated that. And the first thing they go is attack California. So because we're part of America, we are also a target. That's the answers for the military. Okay, homelessness. Half of the homelessness are in California. Okay, well, California is not allowed to police homelessness because of a federal court decision in Utah. A lot of people say it's because we're liberals and we won't do anything about it. We were prevented from policing and cleaning up the homelessness. We were prevented from moving them because of a circuit court decision by a federal court out of Utah. There was a homeless man in front of a Walmart in Utah, and there was a court case that said you can't move him. That became precedent and forced and tied our hands in California. Most Californians and most people don't know that. We were not allowed to clean up homelessness because of the federal government and the federal court system. Secondly, half of the homelessness in America were in California. Okay, homelessness is not a new problem. There's been federal funding set up since the 1970s. It's called the McKinney-Vento Federal Homeless Assistance. It covers veterans, children, and normal homelessness, average people. If we had half of the homelessness in California and of all of America, how come we only got 11% of the McKinney-Vento Federal Homeless Assistance funds? If we had half the people, don't we deserve half the money? But we didn't get that. Finally, a lot of states ship homelessness to California. This has been well documented, many states. One of my favorite points is the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where they made an entire episode about how their grandpa was becoming indigent. So they were looking at homes and then realized that it would be cheaper to put him on a one-way bus ticket to California. People have been caught from Arizona, Texas, Hawaii shipping people here. Let me show you a little bit about that. So let's go to homelessness. Eradicating homelessness permanently 100. Bear with me. Here we go. Homelessness across America. You can see the majority is in California. We can also look at this chart here. These are all the references for the homeless things, which shows all the people being sent into California from the Beige area. And again, tons of references for the homeless. And everything I said is in this blue box here and this blue box here and this one here. So the references are there if you want to see it. And if we're talking about homelessness, the fact is that because we're a donor state, we can't fix it. So in 2019, we lost $20 billion, which is more than enough, as it was estimated, to permanently end homelessness in the Bay Area forever. In 5 years, we could have ended homelessness in Los Angeles forever, permanently, without raising extra tax money. That's how much we're losing every year. So we can't fix homelessness because we don't get to spend our money on ourselves to fix it. And while we're a donor state, and then we don't get our fair share of federal money, even though we pay more into the federal system. Social Security. This is really simple. Under federal law, if you're an American citizen, they can't take away your Social Security. If you're a military veteran, they can't take away your military benefits or checks. They have to send it to you anywhere in the world as long as you are a U.S. citizen, period. That's federal law, can't be broken. We are not going to ask anybody to renounce American citizenship, but add California citizenship. Therefore, they cannot deny you federal benefits by federal law. What about the debt? California leaves, it has to take on a huge share of the American debt. Okay, but a couple of things. One, California's credit rating is better than America's. So if California having to take on debt means California independence is bad, then America shouldn't be a country at all because it has more debt than California, a worse credit rating, and it's a country now. So I've seen people say, California takes on this debt, it shouldn't be allowed to be a country. Okay, de-country America, because they are in worse financial settings with a worse financial credit rating. The other thing is that when you typically demand a country that's breaking off take over their share of the debt, typically what happens is you get the entire nuclear and military arsenal. So you take a fourth of the debt, you get a fourth of the military across the board. That means if we take on their share of the debt, we're about 14% of the population. We get about 14% of all the jets, all the aircrafts, all the nuclear missiles, all the nuclear fighters, all the stealth fighters, all the Marine Corps, everything. So we'll take on the debt and we'll be able to finance it better than America. And if you do that under international precedent, we get all the juicy military goods automatically, including nukes. Let's talk about water. So people would say, well, if you leave, they'll cut off the Colorado River and then LA people won't have water. So what? California has more water than it needs. If the Colorado River is cut off, we have plenty of water to supply everybody in LA with 5 showers a day. We do not have a water problem in California. 80% of our water goes to agriculture, and about 80% of our agriculture is shipped out. We do not have a water production problem. We have a water export problem. We ration water on ourselves so that most of it can go to ag. We need a fraction of the water that we have in California to just grow products to feed ourselves and give ourselves water. More water than we need, most of it's being used by the ag industry. The ag industry is only 2% of the California economy. It could literally be collapsed overnight and would have almost no effect on the California economy. So if America wanted to cut off the Colorado River, we could redirect water to ourselves. However, because we're doing that, we wouldn't be able to ship out as much ag. 90% of all fruits and vegetables in America come from California alone. So if America cuts off the Colorado River, we can't grow food and produce for them. And America finds out that they can literally only eat steak, chicken, and wheat and have lost almost total access to all vegetables and all fruits that co-join their diet. And that would happen overnight. Okay, let's talk about civil war. There will be a civil war if you do this. Why? We asked for a vote to leave. Republicans hate us and kicked us out. Why would they fight to take us back when they kicked us on the butt on the way out through a legal process? That makes no sense at all. Secondly, we're talking about a Canada relationship. No one's ever talking about putting up walls or cutting off trade. Cutting off trade would be ruinous and cause a Great Depression for both California and America, and everybody knows it. So, not interested in cutting off trade with America. There's not going to be a wall. We're talking about Canada, and there's no point of having a civil war if they asked you to leave. That's just ridiculous. Okay, secession is illegal. That is a lie. So, the Civil War decided secession. Constitution doesn't allow secession, and lawyers say this is illegal. Those are all lies. The Civil War did not decide secession. It's not a court case, it's an event. In America, you have to have court cases to make interpretations of the law, not events. Secondly, the Constitution is silent on secession. It doesn't forbid it, it doesn't allow it, it's silent. And lawyers who say this is illegal won't mention these key facts. Number one, Texas versus White is a real Supreme Court case, and it is the only one on secession. It says you can secede with, quote, consent of the states, period. Consent has never been defined by anybody, and that court case has never been revisited. Only one group in all of America, according to the Constitution, can define what consent means officially. That's the Supreme Court. If any lawyer gives his opinion, that's just his opinion. There has to be a court decision for it to be a binding interpretation. That's because the entire American legal system works under stare decisis, which is Latin for case law, meaning you have to argue everything you want in the law from previous cases decided in previous courts. You can't just make it up. So lawyers cannot ignore Texas versus White because of stare decisis and the fact that it is the only case on secession. They'll have to refer to it. They cannot ignore the fact that it says consent to the states. And the other thing is that Erwin Chemerinsky, who's more respected than any other lawyer in California, top constitutional scholar in California, also most cited legal expert in all of America, when asked about Calexit in 2017, said a simple majority vote. He did not say amendment. He said simple majority vote. So what I find interesting is we literally had 2 articles coming out saying secession is legal. They would not mention Texas versus White. They would not mention that Texas versus White said consent to the states. They would not mention that it is the only court case on secession. And they would not mention that Erwin Chemerinsky, who's the top constitutional scholar in America and in California, said simple majority vote. What they're instead saying is secession requires constitutional amendment. That is found nowhere. There is no court case that says that anywhere. The only court case on secession says consent of the states. It does not say amendment. Why would they do that if the amendment process was known for a full century before? There's also the plain language rule in American law. For example, if you make a law saying, I want to ban all furry animals, and somebody comes up and goes, you mean cats and dogs? You can't then go, well, no, I meant dogs. You have to be specific. You have to say what you mean. You can't say, I passed a law on furry animals, and in my heart, although I never said it in the law, I secretly meant dogs and not cats. That's not how that works. You have to say what you mean. So the question is, if Texas versus White said consent of the states and not an amendment of the states, maybe that's because they meant it didn't have to be an amendment. Secondly, if they meant amendment, why not say that under the plain speaking rule, since they knew about it for a century? So why are people saying secession's legal and they can't mention Texas versus White, they can't mention consent to the states, and they can't mention Erwin Chemerinsky said a simple majority vote? That's my question. I see people go, oh, this is illegal, this is illegal. I go, tell me these 3 facts aren't true. They'll look me in the eye and go, I've never heard of any of that. So that's why people say that, because they're being lied to. That's misleading. It's not true. Okay, loss of federal funds. Well, they'll cut off disaster aid, or they'll cut off college tuition, or they'll cut off this, or they'll cut off Medicare, or they'll cut off the military money. California is a donor state, which means we lose money being part of America after everything's paid for. That's after all the federal grants and all the federal money and all the military and everything combined, we still lose, period. So if we're independent, we gain money, not lose money. Secondly, I heard people go, what if they cut off disaster aid? And they were talking like, I think a couple $100 million for disaster aid. We lose $20 billion a year on the light end. That's nothing. Secondly, look at how well the federal government's done on disaster. During 9/11, they wouldn't give us security funding for 5 years, and we were the most vulnerable to terrorist attack. The levees around Sacramento are as bad as the ones over New Orleans. They've never fixed them. They've also recently said that they couldn't help disaster victims in America because they spent all the money on Ukraine. Additionally, when you look at the recessions under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, where California asked for a little bit of money when we were in a destitute space, both Democratic presidents turned us down. So I challenge anybody to find the economic or physical emergency disaster where the federal government responded well. We have this well documented showing they've done a horrible job the entire time. So let's do that. They'll cut off disaster aid. Let me show you that. Disaster assistance, page 61. See how easy this is? California never receives disaster assistance, page 61. So California's never received proper or any significant disaster assistance funding for every single disaster since the 1990s. This includes earthquakes, fires, economic recession, or preventing terrorist attacks. Democratic presidents Clinton and Obama both denied CAO financial assistance. President Bush denied adequate funding to California to prevent terrorism for 5 years. At the same time, while Obama denied financial assistance to CA, he bailed out the state of Michigan with federal money, although California was more important to the overall national economy. Duke Majan complaining about lack of assistance. Loma Prieta 93, lack of assistance. Earthquake Recover 92, lack of assistance. 94, lack of assistance. 1992 financial massacre, left to go on our own. 2000 electrical massacre, protected by the federal government and allowed by the federal government. .com bubble, created by the federal government and no help from Obama, although it was created by them. Terrorist attack help. We didn't get it for 5 years, although they were most likely to be attacked. FEMA has no plans for what to do in an earthquake in California because California is much too large. So it's all there. You can see all the references. Loss of federal funds, the disaster aid. Oh, let me also show you this. Somebody asked to see this. Here you go. Here's the donor state stuff. People are like, how can you prove the donor state thing? California does not have to be a donor state. Here you go. Federal funding, page 49. And here's the statistics. CA paid the federal government 1994 to 2014. There you go. There's the proof. This has been going on. Here you go, all the way to 2014. Here's a chart outlining it, 1995, 2014. California paid more to the federal government these years. All itemized. Here's the Internal Revenue Service, where we got all the data. Here's all the numbers going all the way back. 10-year historical data summaries, also consolidated federal reports. So that's where we got all the donor state data showing it for years. This will drive businesses out. That's a total lie. So here's what. If you don't have to fill out federal regulation forms, like California has Cal-OSHA and the federal government has OSHA. If you only have to fill out forms for the California government and you don't have to fill out 50% of your paperwork for regulation, that's a boom for business. Because we're a donor state, we could also get rid of income taxes for business. When we ask business owners, 50% regulatory reduction in your overhead and business income taxes removed, everyone says that is a boom for the economy. Let's also talk about the fact that California is an international trade-focused economy. We have to wait 5 to 10 years to wait to sell products. We're also an international tech-focused economy. We've lost sales of phone and laptop products because global concern of U.S. spying. That's about 6 to 8 billion a year. Also, America does some ugly things in the world which disgust people, and then they don't want to invest anywhere in America. The number one place for foreign direct investment in the entire planet is California. But when people around the world are disgusted with American foreign policy, they invest less in America, including California, even if California was against those policies like the Vietnam and Iraq war. When you add all of these things up, our economy will explode with independence. Finally, let's talk about health and kids. We can have single payer healthcare with choices, with options, not the Canadian system, not the Canadian system, not the Canadian system. Choices, choices, choices. I was told to say that. We mean it. A California-based single payer healthcare system we could have with independence, and we wouldn't have to raise taxes at all. Additionally, we don't get to have the gun regulations that we want. So we have mass shootings here. We propose laws to protect ourselves from those, and then the federal courts strike that down. So we can't even protect our children from mass shootings. Finally, we can't protect our children from coming back in body bags. Vietnam War, biggest protest, California. Iraq War, biggest protest, California. Number one place for dead boys and girls, Vietnam War, California. Number one place for dead boys and girls, Iraq War, California. So we're the most against these wars, and we have the most dead youth coming back. That's your top 10 answers. All the materials found right there. Calexitnow.org, frequently asked questions. What is the process to Calexit legally? And we'll see you again very soon.